Number 10. Hail Hydra. During Secret Wars and following Captain America Hail Hydra, this series takes place in a time where Captain America is no longer the leader of Hydra. Thank goodness. He is helping lead the last of the rebellion against Hydra, who seemingly are in charge of pretty much everything now, and under the command of Norman Osborn. Luckily, this Earth 138 Spider-Man, also known as Spider-Punk, Hobby Brown, manages to take him out with an army of amps and punk rock. This Venom is portrayed as being creepy, and heck, to be honest, I just love this universe. Number 7. 1602 EDWIN BROCC. In this version, Venom appears as a demon being hunted by witch hunter Angela. He also appears to have a bewitching effect on the ladies. He is a warlock with potion making abilities that he uses on the most beautiful ladies of the village to make them fall in love with him. Although this doesn't last long, as he fights Angela, transforming into Venom, and is defeated. Still, if you haven't read or looked at the 1602 comics, I highly recommend it. The Witch Hunter series art is spearheaded by Stephanie Hans, with Irene Coe joining her for pencils and ink, and Jordi Belair joining her for colors in issue number 2 of the series, where Venom appears. Number 6. 2015 Civil War Venom. During the war between Iron Man and Captain America, the symbiote Venom gets a new host, Clint Barton. That's right, Hawkeye. This version has the skill of Hawkeye and the abilities of Venom. Pretty neat, right? Clint Barton seems very in control of this Venom during the symbiosis and is presented in a sleek alternate version of the Venom symbiote. He also doesn't talk as much as almost any other version of Venom. In fact, I'm not sure he utters a word in the comics at all. He doesn't need to talk to take out King Ock though. King Ock is a combination of Kingpin and Doc Ock's tentacles. Kingpin killed Doc Ock to get them and attach them to himself. However, this resulted in his brain being fried by the tentacles, who did not like their new host very much, leaving Kingpin a corpse that the tentacles had full control of. If you can imagine how big and scary this villain is, you can imagine how cool it is when Venom, Hawkeye, takes him out with a symbiotic bow. Number 5. Venom in the Spider-Man 1990s animated series. As you may already know, I'm a huge cartoon nerd, so I couldn't have a Venom list without mentioning one of the many Spider-Man cartoons. This is a great and classic rendition of Venom. One of the things I love about this series story is how obsessed and strong team. After the Flash lost his legs in the Iraq War, he bonds with Venom after he was enlisted in Project Rebirth 2.0. The symbiote creates legs for the Flash again so he can run around. This version of Venom combines the Flash's powers with the symbiote's powers, meaning that he has spidey sense, can shoot webs, climb walls, is super strong, and he can even heal injuries and rid other people's bodies of impurities. Number 1. Venom the 2018 movie. Okay, I know there is some contrasting opinions. Do we like it or don't we? But this list is not about the whole story. This is a list about the awesome versions of Venom. And although I too had some issues with the 2018 film in its entirety, I cannot deny that I enjoyed Tom Hardy's portrayal of Eddie Brock as Venom. Although the original storyline shares some overlap with the film, there is quite a lot that is different. Eddie Brock's weakness is usually that he feels incomplete without Venom, that he feels as though he is lesser of a person without Venom due to his own low self-esteem and feelings of worthlessness. That and probably his hatred of Peter Parker and the symbiote's hatred of Spider-Man, which prevent Venom from living their own full and independent life. In this version, Eddie Brock is portrayed as, I would say, an overly confident guy, and it is his own passion for always doing the right thing and his own hubris that leads to the loss of his job and his fiancée. This film more explores the buddy-buddy dynamic of the symbiote, Venom, and Brock. In fact, this is not so much a codependent relationship as an equal one. There is a give and take between both, and although the two don't need each other, they choose to be with each other. Okay, so the symbiote needs to achieve symbiosis to live, but it could arguably do that with someone else. I personally love how funny, terrifying, and fun this rendition of Venom is.
In the number 10 spot, we have animated Venom. We are kicking this list off with a version of Venom that really helped throw the symbiote into the spotlight in the first place. If you are a 90s kid and watched Spider-Man the animated series, chances are you have memories of this version of Eddie Brock as one of the most prominent Venoms. This version of Venom mostly followed the ultimate story of the symbiote suit, but it cut out all the unnecessary details and allowed Venom to just be Venom, because sometimes less is more. Coming in at number 9 is Mayhem. Debuting in The Amazing Spider-Girl number 20, the Green Goblin makes a clone of May Parker, Peter Parker's daughter, and genetically alters her to be the first half-human, half-venom symbiote hybrid. This way she could have the abilities of the symbiote without the dual consciousness. The clone, who gives herself the name April Parker, is is offered a place in the Parker family eventually, and she teams up with the real May Parker as her more violent, slightly annoying, but very useful partner. Next up at number 8 we got Poison. In What If, Spider-Man the Other, Spidey rejects his resurrection granted to him by the Great Weaver. He is found cocooned under a bridge by the Venom symbiote, and Venom decides to have a little fun by entering the cocoon and giving Spider-Man a bit of a makeover. A little bit of bonding and the result is Poison, a version of Venom and Spidey that promptly heads over and tries to share this symbiote gift with Mary Jane. Sounds a lot like an STD to me, so it's no surprise she said hell no. In the number 7 spot is She-Venom. Introduced in the Amazing Spider-Man number 375, the first She-Venom was Anne Weying, Eddie Brock's ex-wife and a high-profile lawyer. She's shot by a copycat killer of Sin Eater, and in order to save her life, Brock allows the symbiote to bond with her. It works a bit too well, actually. Suddenly, she became hell-bent on seeking revenge against all men who had ever wronged her. Eddie was more than a little nervous, so he called the symbiote back, but not before she managed to get her hands on a few unfortunate souls. Coming in at number 6 we have Rain Venom. Spider-Man Rain was a 4-part series featuring a version of Venom called Edward Sack, who served as New York City Mayor's controlling assistant. He implements a security system called WEB, W-E-B-B, that prevents people from escaping the city, and then proceeds to create symbiote clones to form an army. Lesson learned, keep this thing out of office. Next up at number 5 is Venom Clone. The 2003 Venom series took a new spin on the popular villain, tilting it in the direction of horror. A member of the US Army, Patricia Robertson, discovers that a group called the Ararat Corporation, which is composed of little spider robots, has created a clone of the Venom symbiote, which has in fact killed its creator. There's that experiment gone wrong. This would eventually lead to Robertson becoming She-Venom number 2. Up next at number 4 is Venom 2099. Cronstone first appeared as Venom in Spider-Man 2099 number 35, although he had previously appeared in Punisher 2099 number 1. He is the half-brother of Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara, although the relationship was less than peachy. He went on to kill Jake Gallo's family, and when Jake became the Punisher, he made sure Stone got served some justice. To keep from dying, Stone bonded with the Venom symbiote, similar to Anne Weying. This time around, he even had acidic saliva and blood. Fantastic new addition to an already evil character. In the number 3 spot, we have Venom the Journalist. Cited as perhaps the best cinematic version of Venom, Venom, Truth in Journalism was a 2013 short film, black and white found footage style, featuring Venom's own perspective. The film shows Eddie Brock's desperation for his film crew's validation as they follow him in his daily life, eventually having the crew come face to face with the symbiote part of Brock. It's a combo between dark comedy and a bit of horror, and at only 17 minutes long, it is definitely worth the watch. Coming in at number 2 is Space Knight. Flash Thompson, the childhood bully of Peter Parker, is the star in the series of Venom Space Knight. Immersed in a world full of aliens and beautifully drawn environments, this version of Venom and his suicidal but nonetheless lovable sidekick 803 journey the world in service of Guardians of the Galaxy. This would eventually lead them to the home planet of the symbiote. It's an interesting twist on Venom and a great way for Flash to redeem himself and confront the failures of his past. And there are quite a few. And finally, in the number 1 spot, we've got Venom Pool. Here he is, kids, now you can't yell at me anymore. Joke's on me, you're still gonna yell. What If Venom Possessed Deadpool was released in 2011 and answered exactly that. While on a contract to kill the Beyonder, Deadpool is interrupted by a pissed Spidey who demands the Beyonder to remove the symbiote costume from him. The symbiote sees something he likes in Deadpool and jumps from Peter's body into Wilson's. What ensues, of course, is a character that provides a lot of laughs and a pretty bad perm that prevented any hero teams from wanting him. Yeah, this was a very serious story. In the number 10 spot, we have Zombie Venom. In the Marvel Zombie miniseries, Venom got himself a brief stint as a zombified villain facing off against, who else? Spider-Man. The Zombie series was characterized by vivid and often pretty gruesome artwork. In a fight over who would get to eat the dead flesh of Galactus, Venom faced off against Spider-Man, albeit in zombified form, and ended up getting himself killed. The symbiote was unable to sap adrenaline from Eddie Brock's zombified body, and therefore this Venom just wasn't feeling himself. Even Spidey himself was like, dude, are you good? Like, why are you so pathetic today? Coming in at number 9 is Ultimate Venom. Usually Venom is depicted as an alien being. However, in the pages of Ultimate Spider-Man, Venom wasn't an alien at all, but rather a suit created to cure cancer. Peter Parker and Eddie Jr. are friends in this arc and come together to pick up the project that was originally their father's, with disastrous consequences in the form of a rift in their friendship when Peter wanted to destroy the suit and Eddie wanted to keep it. So Eddie did the only thing he could think of and lets himself become engulfed. So much for that friendship. Next up at number 8 is Mangaverse Venom. In the Marvel Mangaverse, this version of Venom was a man born into the Spider Clan by by Shinji and May Parker, so it was actually Peter Parker's cousin, whose skin was discolored when he was struck by spider venom laced arrows from the Shadow Clan. He was trained as a ninja by May's second husband, Ben Parker. Some fun family ties going on here. But as comic books would have it, he was tempted to the dark side and strayed from Spider Clan to join the Shadow Clan, even though they had previously murdered his sister and dad. Does loyalty mean nothing to you? In the number 7 spot, we've got Earth X Venom. Different May Parker this time. Feeling a little salty at the way Peter Parker rejected it, the alien symbiote decided to try and turn Spidey's daughter May Parker against him. I always love a good family drama in my comics, makes me feel so much better about my own. However, the plan backfired because May was able to control the symbiote and use it to her advantage, so she decided to follow in Daddy's footsteps and go on to save the world. Coming in at number 6 is Agent Venom. Flash Thompson is Peter Parker's high school bully. He was introduced in 1962 and then much later in 2011 made a reappearance, this time as the latest host of the Venom symbiote. After high school, he got his legs blown off in a military-related accident, but was bonded with Venom to partake in a special mission, and doing so created new legs out of biomass. He can only bond with Venom for 48 hours at a time to keep his mind intact, however, but we can imagine the allure of walking again would create quite the emotional turmoil every time he had to unbind himself. Next up at number 5, we have Mini Marvel's Venom. Only because he is so cute, I mean look at that tooth. Perhaps the most family-friendly of the Venoms, Mini Venom is Eddie Brock, a reporter at the Daily Bugle. Eddie wants to be the very best reporter that no one ever was, but his attempts are constantly foiled by the symbiote he befriends, which is actually composed of living ink this time around. Up next at number 4 is Symbiote Punisher. The What If series of 1977 and onward took a look at what would happen if Venom bonded with Punisher. Long story short, it doesn't look too good for the criminals. The symbiote's shape-shifting abilities gave the Punisher access to glider wings, and it also causes Frank Castle to be even more violent and unrestrained in his ventures. It took a pretty hefty blast from Spider-Man to get the Punisher back in control. So if you are already a brutal and violent person, please stay away from the gooey stuff. In the number 3 spot, we've got Pork Grind. Yes, we're still talking about Venom here, we didn't go off into Foodland, not yet. Sadly. If you all remember our bacony little friend Spider-Ham, then you know that no superhero is complete without an equally fattening sounding villain. Hence, Pork Grind was introduced. A version of Venom that was basically a hammy Arnold Schwarzenegger from the Aniverse. One who was brave enough to say what we were all thinking as kids: spinach is yucky. Coming in at number 2, we have T-Rex Venom. Because who doesn't love a dinosaur thrown in for good measure every now and again? In Old Man Logan, the symbiote has picked a rather interesting host this time. No more measly men, time to bond with a giant T-Rex. This particular T-Rex was imported from the Savage Land to the US, and gave Wolverine a pretty big run, or I guess drive, for his money. So when shopping for dinos, please buy local, kids, save the Wolverines. And finally, in the number 1 spot is the original Venom. This isn't exactly an alternate version, but rather the true and dark version that never was. Originally, Venom was going to be a pregnant woman whose husband is struck and killed before her eyes by a taxi driver, who is distracted by seeing Spider-Man. The shock induces her labor, and she also loses her baby in the process. So when the symbiote finds her and bonds with her, she decides to seek out revenge against Spider-Man. The story was culled because the editor Jim Salicrup didn't believe a woman seemed to pose enough threat to be a major villain. I guess the guy's never been married.
Number 10, Venom 2018. Okay, now before there's a lot of angry comments, just let me explain. In this version of Venom, the symbiote still comes from outer space, but the difference with this version is that, it was not brought by Spider-Man after the events of Secret Wars. The symbiote doesn't even bond with Spider-Man first, it just goes directly with Eddie, because of the Life Foundation. Now, I know a lot of people are mixed on this movie. I'm one of them. The movie itself had a lot of problems, but the one thing that the majority of people agreed on was how cool Venom looked in this movie. Finally, he was brought to screen and he looked comic accurate after, because a lot of the complaints with Spider-Man 3. Now, the movie itself could have been better, but, baby steps. Maybe Venom, Let There Be Carnage will be better, and finally we'll actually get to see Venom and Carnage on the big screen at the same time, which is cool. Just hopefully the movie holds up. Number 9, Ultimate Venom. So in the Ultimate Universe, Richard Parker, aka Peter's dad, and Edward Brock, aka Eddie Brock's dad, were the ones to develop the symbiote. But Peter and Eddie are the ones who continue to work on this project once their fathers are no longer around. At one point, Peter gets a drop of the symbiote on himself and dons the black suit Spider-Man. It enhanced his powers, but as Peter found out one time, it was... how do you put this? It's really hard to control, and it made him a bit strange, as he almost killed a robber. Peter doesn't want to continue, but of course, Eddie does. Eddie is upset and decides to continue this work and merges himself with the symbiote, thus creating Ultimate Venom. I think the first time I really got into the Ultimate series was after I played Ultimate Spider-Man the game, which to this day is, It's either that or Spider-Man 2 the game, or the new Spider-Man PS4 is the best Spider-Man game ever. Those three are just so good. But I remember just playing so much Ultimate Spider-Man as a kid. I replayed that game multiple times. Number 8, Deadpool Venom. This is something that is actually really funny. So in Deadpool Secret Wars, Deadpool wears the symbiote. Very briefly though, but he does merge with it, apparently being one of the first people to do so. We all know how crazy and insane Deadpool is, so it should come as no surprise that when the symbiote is part of him, that makes the symbiote want to go, well, a little mad and crazy as well. Even for the brief time it was merged with Deadpool, he made that big of an impact on it. This isn't even the last time Deadpool merged with the symbiote. He also did in Back in Black. After the symbiote left Peter, it merged with Wade Wilson, enhancing his abilities, and even gave him a cool new suit. And we all know Deadpool already has a cool suit, so it's pretty cool. Number 7, Agent Venom. So Agent Venom becomes possible because basically the US government have got their hands on the symbiote, and of course, they want to transform it for themselves to use it as a weapon, which, you know, is always the case. Now, Flash Thompson was in the military, and during a time when he was serving, he lost both of his legs. The military decides to use Flash to become Agent Venom. He bonds with the symbiote and regenerates his legs. So, since the government controls Agent Venom, they want to keep it all, you know, low-key, hush-hush, and they have him acting in the shadows for them. This led to a pretty bad Venom outfit, and a lot of people really want to see Agent Venom be adapted on the screen one day, and think it'd be a nice change of pace since Eddie Brock has been the main point in the movie so far. Have Flash Thompson do it. Hey, come on, he's established, we could make it happen. Number 6, T-Rex Venom. So yes, there has even been a T-Rex Venom. That just blows my mind. This was all in the comic series Old Man Logan, which, you know, the movie Logan was based off of, slightly. So although we didn't see this in the actual film, the Old Man Logan comic series, which, you know, as I just mentioned, it is adapted from, had dinosaurs that appeared from the Savage Land. I mean, that's pretty nuts. And to make things even crazier, a T-Rex has the symbiote and is after Logan. I don't know about you guys, but I'd definitely love to see T-Rex Venom on the big screen. Imagine him fighting Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. God, that would have been amazing. But probably impossible now. But I mean, a fan can dream, right? Number 5, She-Venom. So She-Venom was introduced in the comics when Eddie Brock married Anne. Now, Anne doesn't become She-Venom until they end the marriage. As it turns out, Anne gets shot, and when Eddie hears about this, he still wants to help her and not have her killed. So he does the only logical thing. He lets her bond with the symbiote. It bonds with Anne, but it doesn't go as expected and actually turns her quite violent to the point where she attacks the people that injured her. Eddie doesn't want Anne to turn evil and he takes the symbiote back. They even introduced her in the 2018 film with Michelle Williams taking on the role of Anne, and we actually got to see her as She-Venom, which, you know, was a pretty cool moment. But yeah, I mean, they're few and far between. Number 4, Venom Thor. Thor has had a variety of different versions of himself throughout the years, but there has even been a version of Venom Thor. So in the comic series What If, they play a scenario up of the symbiote being able to take over any superhero and even successfully taking over Spider-Man. It even took over the body of Hulk in that series. Hulk ends up fighting Thor, and well, the symbiote transfers over to Thor. He is able to defeat it and detach it from his body, but it was cool to see them, you know, merge together, even if it was for a short time. I mean, seeing Venom look like kind of like Thor was interesting, but you know, it was pretty cool. Number 3, Punisher Venom. This is another iteration from the comic series What If, and in this version of Venom, we saw the dark combination of the symbiote merging with Frank Castle. Yes, if you ever thought about the symbiote merging with the Punisher, you got a glimpse of that in this series with the creation of Punisher Venom. This duo became very dangerous, with the symbiote even being able to create a gun without running out of bullets. Number 2, Hulk Venom. So in the comic series What If, the symbiote attaches to a new host, the Hulk. It's able to take over the Hulk and even make him more powerful than ever before. Being as unpredictable as Hulk can be in general, having the Hulk merged with the symbiote creates a deadly combination. Now, in the series, it wasn't on Hulk for a long duration, but still the fact that we got to witness the two of them bond together was really cool, and also very, very scary. Number 1, Red Hulk Ghost Rider Venom. So this is quite the different version of Venom that we have, you know, ever seen, quite frankly. In this version, we get a combination of Red Hulk, Ghost Rider, and of course, Venom, aka Agent Venom at this point. Now, X-23 is in this storyline as well, but isn't part of the merge. Now, you might ask yourself, how did this even happen? Well, it turns out Blackheart, aka Mephisto's son, is trying to merge Hell with Earth. So, in the battle, the only way that they can try and match Blackheart's power is to merge together. So Red Hulk and Ghost Rider merge with the symbiote, creating this ultimate force that is able to become strong enough to defeat Blackheart and his evil plans. I mean, that would be something to see on the big screen if they story, especially in the MCU if they get Red Hulk and Venom and, oh god, Ghost Rider, that'd be insane.
Starting us off in at number 10, the Hulk. Generally speaking, anytime the Hulk is given some sort of advantage in combat beyond what he's already capable of doing, it's pretty darn dangerous. So now imagine what our green pal was capable of when Venom decided to bond with him. Yikes. But thanks to one of Marvel's What If titles, we know exactly what would happen if Venom bonded with the Hulk. Now in What If Volume 2, Issue 4, there was a story called What If the Alien Costume Had Possessed Spider-Man. This was back in October of 1989, a year after Venom and Eddie Brock had hit the scene, so the readers knew what the symbiote was capable of now. More on that later though. So the concept for this explored what if Spider-Man waited longer before going to Mr. Fantastic, who ultimately separated him from the symbiote. In the story, Peter had been irreversibly bonded with Venom, and would later stumble upon the Hulk, who was on a rampage. The symbiote was like, ooh, I want to join with him, and jumped ship, bonding with the Hulk instead, who the symbiote promised to help, saying that he could aid Bruce Banner with his uncontrollable hulking out problems. But the symbiote would later give up on that loose promise and ditch the Hulk for another character that he deemed more powerful, who appears a little bit later on our list. Next up at number 9, Galactus. Now, technically speaking, Galactus doesn't really count as a character who's bonded with the symbiote. But to Spider-Man, it appears as if the god was Venom's host. Galactus Venom appears in a story in which Mysterio has completely messed with Peter Parker's head, and Peter sees Galactus donning the Venom symbiote. While it has no actual story impact aside from being a really cool splash page, it's still pretty neat to ponder what on Earth, or rather in the galaxy, Venom would do if he were ever to bond with an entity that powerful. I'd take it Peter really didn't want to find out. In our number 8 spot, Norman Osborn. Twice, actually. Norman Osborn has bonded twice with the Venom symbiote in alternate timelines. Now, once was featured in one of the many universes in the Spider-Verse stories. In this one, Norman Osborn had become the US president, and in an unprecedented move, he created something called the Variable Engagement Neurosensitive Organic Mesh, which is basically an altered version of the symbiote, something that he and his followers could wear in order to clean up America. And yes, he was totally a fascist. He even said the words, I quote, "It had to be this way, Spider-Man. We're in the business of making America great again." Yup. The second time was a little less political and occurred in the MC2 universe. Enter Normie Osborn, the son of Harry Osborn who, thanks to Spider-Girl, went from being a baddie to trying to be a good guy. But then the Venom symbiote finds him, bonds with him, and Normie actually ends up reforming it, with the symbiote sacrificing itself later on down the line to help Spider-Girl fight the Hobgoblin. Not all Osborns are bad after all. Up next, number 7, Thor. Remember that what if issue we were talking about earlier? The one in which the Hulk bonds with Venom? Well, the character that the symbiote ditches Hulk for is none other than Thor. Thor would fight against the Hulk Venom, and despite winning the battle against it, the symbiote managed to creep out and bond with the God of Thunder. While Thor struggled mentally with the symbiote, it forced him to hide out in Mount Rushmore, until they were finally defeated by Black Bolt with his hypersonic voice, and inevitably destroyed by Black Cat wielding a sonic gun. Couldn't let Black Bolt have it, could she? Moving on to our number 6, Groot. During one Guardians of the Galaxy story arc, Venom, who was bonded with Flash Thompson at the time, makes an appearance, with the narrative's focus being the Clintar returning to his home planet. Venom ends up fighting against the Guardians, and after breaking out of a glass jar that they had trapped him in, he bonds with Groot, resulting in the character repeatedly shouting, "I am Venom." So good. Other Guardians briefly became hosts too, including Rocket Raccoon and Drax. In our number 5 spot, Patricia Robertson. Venom's bonding with Robertson is often seen as a bit of a disaster. Now, in a story written by Daniel Way under Marvel's Tsunami imprint, there was this really weird 18-issue Venom story arc that happened in 2004. Essentially, it was revealed in issue 11 of this arc that there was a Venom clone, which had come to be when Venom tried to kill the Thing by shoving his tongue down his throat. Yes, actually. And then the Human Torch burnt it off. So this burnt off piece of tongue that the Thing coughed up was found by a civilian, who then tried to sell it on eBay, where a man made out of nanites contacted him. This nanite man was apparently the nanites who inspired Noah's Ark. Yes, really. Whose master plan was to wait for an alien symbiote to be on Earth so that they could use it to cause the apocalypse. Confused? Yeah. So was like everybody else who read this story arc. Anywho, nanite old dude man guy cloned the tongue, and the symbiote was let loose until an army lieutenant by the name of Patricia Robertson shows up and becomes bonded with it, becoming a she-venom, and her character was pretty poorly written. Her symbiote clone ended up merging with BROCC's Venom, and after that we pretty much never heard about Robertson ever again. And at number 4, Deadpool. Deadpool is technically the first human host that Venom ever bonded with. This was revealed during Secret Wars, when Deadpool stumbles upon the symbiote in captivity on Battleworld. He puts it on, realizes it's alive and was interfacing with his mind, and then Venom's like, I can't really handle this very well, considering Deadpool is already insane. Deadpool then returns the symbiote moments before Spidey shows up, searching for a new costume to replace the one that he had damaged in battle. But overall, the encounter with Deadpool is a pretty comical one. This actually isn't the only time that Venom has bonded with Deadpool either. One of those other times actually happened in a What If title. Good ol' what ifs. And at number 3, the Submariner. Spider-Man 2099 was a character that first appeared in a preview in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 365, and of course he comes from the year 2099. He's a fellow named Miguel O'Hara who has managed to recreate Spider-Man's powers. He got his own series in the Marvel 2099 comic line in 1992. In his story, he encounters a character named Roman, which is Namor spelled backwards. He's an Atlantean terrorist who would be caught by Spidey only to later escape captivity, and then accidentally cause the Venom symbiote to be released. Venom bonded with the Submariner, transformed himself into a very piranha-esque creature who had sharp teeth on the end of his tongue. The best part is, since that went down in the series' final issue, whatever happened to Venom Roman Submariner was just never actually resolved. He dived deep down into the ocean and escaped, never to be heard from again. And at number 2, Mac Gargan. Venom once recounted his time with Mac Gargan as bad, with, I quote, thoughts like poison stingers, and that it was a thrill to kill. Mac was a mean-spirited Venom, which kind of makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Gargan, most known for being the man behind the villain Scorpion, bonded with the symbiote during Marvel Knight's Spider-Man. Working under Norman Osborn at the time, he was meant to be refitted with a new Scorpion suit when Venom popped up, and the combination was pretty ruthless. Gargan was very into being Venom, ended up working under Osborn as a Dark Avenger and a Thunderbolt, and would go around pulling off a whole lot of evil stunts, killing with zero remorse. At the time, Carnage was thought to be dead, so Gargan really stepped up to give the readers the symbiote brutality that we all know and love. Eventually though, all good things come to an end, even for Mac. The government would remove Venom from him at the end of Dark Reign, and he would return to his Scorpion alias. And finally, in our number 1 spot, Spider-Man. While Deadpool may have been the first human host, Peter Parker's Spider-Man is the character that introduced the world to the Venom symbiote. But as we mentioned in our intro, there's quite the history behind how that came to be. Now back in 1982, Marvel received a letter from a fan in Illinois named Randy Schuler, who came up with this idea that Spider-Man should get a new costume that would later become an alien character. Editor-in-chief at the time, Jim Shooter, responded to that letter. They dug the idea, and they paid Schuler a whopping $220 for the rights to the idea. Vaguely inspired by the new costume design for the new Spider-Woman character at the time, they went with a black and white outfit. It wasn't until writer Tom DeFalco and artist Ron Frenz came on board that it was determined that the costume was a sentient alien vulnerable to high sonic energy. Spidey puts the suit on, looking for new threads after being kidnapped by the Beyonder to his planet to fight in his Secret Wars. When he returns to Earth after Secret Wars, he begins to notice that the costume is acting strangely, so he gets Mr. Fantastic to help him remove it, and that's when they discover that it's actually a living organism. Mr. Fantastic keeps it in captivity in his HQ, but the symbiote breaks free, and eventually finds Eddie Brock, bonding with him and creating Venom in issue 300 of The Amazing Spider-Man, where him and Spidey would duke it out for the very first time.
Number 10. Alternate versions. There are a few different versions of She-Venom, including Anne Wang and Patricia Robertson, who is portrayed by Michelle Williams in the new Venom movie, just to name a few. Anne first appears in The Amazing Spider-Man number 375 way back in 1993. She also makes 2 more appearances, first with a cameo in Venom Sinner Takes All number 2, and having her first full appearance in Venom Sinner Takes All number 3. Patricia Robertson not only appears in the movie, but in the comic book Venom number 1, and she returns as She-Venom in Venom number 10. Being that there are more than one She-Venom, I'll make sure to mention which character I'm talking about before delivering the info. Number 9. A Spider-Man Alliance. Early on in her appearances, Anne was frightened of Venom, but being his ex-wife meant she knew a lot about it, and in trying to prevent her ex-husband from a tyrannical rampage, she gave Spider-Man stories, information, and history about BROCC. She even so boldly confronted her psychotic former husband when she followed Spider-Man to an amusement park where Venom had lured Peter with hopes of saving his parents. She then managed to convince Eddie to give up this horrible vendetta against Spider-Man. Good job, Anne. Number 8. Venom's Soft Spot. In Anne's first cameo in the comic book Venom Venom Sinner Takes All #2, she's held at gunpoint by Sin Eater, who threatens her life after saying, "If my thumb should slip off this dead man's switch, 20 pounds of plastic explosives will send us all to eternity." And Venom pleads with Sin Eater that Anne is an innocent and to let her go. When Sin Eater refuses to listen, he fires off a shot from his gun, which Venom dives in front of to block. I found this kind of heartwarming, you know, because Venom rarely cares about innocence. We even see him divide from the suit later on and order the symbiote to fuse with Anne to bring her back to life, thus creating the Bride of Venom. Number 7, 1602. We have yet another version of Anne and Venom that comes to us from 1602 Witch Hunter Angela #2. In this time period, she is known as the Village Beauty and is charmed by one Edwin BROCC, although BROCC, and he is attacked by the Witch Hunter when she sees that he's possessed by Venom. Edwin is doing some slimy stuff here in the comic book by giving Anne a drink that seemingly makes her fall in love with him. Number 6, Spider-Gwen, or as we'll be discovering, Gwenom, makes her first appearance in Spider-Gwen Volume 2, number 24. The Gwenom arc came out of a beloved series of Spider-Gwen, and the creation of the name is just hilarious. The artist Robbie Rodriguez told Newsarama, "In the tradition of Spider-Gwen, we just made another book out of a pun we came up with in a bar." Spider-Gwen becomes Gwenom when she used a device that emits a sound wave used in an attempt to remove the symbiote from a newly infected Wolverine. However, without a host, the sound wave has no effect and binds to Spider-Gwen, taking over her, giving us the birth of Gwenom. And she looks so badass, I mean, just look. Number 5, video games. Yes, that's right, She-Venom has made appearances in the video game Spider-Man Unlimited. In this game, sometime after becoming Spider-Woman, Gwen Stacy is recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. to defeat a team of Sinister Sixers from across the multiverse. In her first appearance of Gwenom in Edge of Spider-Verse #2, her best friend Harry Osborn is infected with the lizard virus. To top it all off, she has her new spider powers forcibly removed, leaving her with one option: to turn to Earth 65, Kingpin of Crime. This Kingpin is seen with his own experimental version of the symbiote that Gwen sees as the answer to her problems. Number 4, high school student. Annie Benton, who wasn't one of the characters I mentioned in the number 10 spot, was a high school student who attended West Philadelphia High School. She became friends with her new neighbor Flash Thompson, who was also an assistant coach at her school and in possession of the Venom symbiote. After she was the target of Jack-o'-lantern because of this friendship, Thompson used the symbiote in an effort to save Andy. However, the symbiote suit ended up intertwining with Benton, transforming her into Mania. Number 3, communications specialist. Patricia Robertson is a 24-year-old communications specialist and lieutenant for the US Army, who was actively stationed at a radar station in Canada. This town in which she was stationed was called Christmas Town and was located just above the Arctic Circle. On her way to deliver an errand to a laboratory nearby that was owned by the Ararat Corporation, she found that all of these scientists had been massacred. This lab had been trying to study Venom symbiotes and their clones when everything went south and the clone escaped, killing everyone. Well, except for a single survivor, that is. And unknowingly, Patricia carried the symbiote back to her original post in Christmas Town, where it began again, killing everyone except for her. Number 2, Miss Marvenom. Okay, I made that name up. But did you know that even Miss Marvel has been bonded with the Venom suit in the past? Originally, the suit was bonded to the evil Gargan, who used it to cannibalize Asgardians. And when Spider-Man and Miss Marvel showed up to stop him, her powers ripped the suit off, thus causing the symbiote to jump ship to Miss Marvel. This She-Venom is probably the most dangerous due to the fact that it possessed both her powers and that of the Venom suit. However, it didn't last long when Miss Marvel managed to trick the symbiote and blast the alien off her while it was then reunited with Gargan. Number 1, hardcore fans. When Spider-Gwen first turned into Gwenom, it became the beginning of just a giant series arc that fans fell in love with and this new character. We have seen some amazing fan art from lovers of She-Venom and even a fan trailer that was made. It looks so legit too. Here's a quick clip, roll it. In this fan-made teaser, we see another alternate possibility for She-Venom. Perhaps she could be Eddie's daughter or a close relative. Either way, if you want to see the full video, well, make sure to put it down in the description there. But remember, it is a fan trailer.